Don't ask for too much.
Well, they started to and they saw the wall.
Okay. Which clock is right? Okay.
It's not 7 o'clock yet.
No, my computer thinks it is, so I wanted to make sure.
That's what you were checking.
Thank you.
We're going to get to this pretty quickly tonight.
RC car. If you got a strong enough one, that's
Time is now 7 o'clock, and I'll call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Beloit City Council. We're here at 100 State Street, Beloit, Wisconsin, in the City Hall Forum, and today is Monday, February 2nd, 2015. Can I have a roll call?
Roll call shows all councilors present.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is special orders of the day and announcements. We have none this evening. Item 4 is public hearings, and we have none. So that brings us to citizens' participation. We've reached the point in the meeting for members of the public to speak to the council about issues that are coming before us or may come before us in the future. The council will not act on any requests this evening unless the item you are speaking about is already on our agenda, but we may act on requests at a future meeting, or we may refer a speaker to staff for assistance. We ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes or less and avoid making personal attacks. If anyone wishes to speak this evening, please approach the podium now. Second call for anyone wishing to speak during citizens' participation. Third and final call for anyone wishing to speak during citizens' participation. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. Does any councilor wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 6A through E. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Lukey, second by DeForest. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? This is approved 7-0. Item 7 is ordinances. We have none. Item 8 is appointments. We have none. Item 9, councilor activities and upcoming events. Councilor Lupke.
I was pleased to go to the BIF grand opening or kickoff last week at Maryland, Houston, and surprised but very pleased that our city manager and his wife were not elected, but made co-chair people for this year's BIF, and it was a very nice honor for Larry and his wife. So I want to encourage all people to get the schedules that came out in the Beloit Daily News on, I think it was Saturday, and we have not just 1 but 2 weeks of fine films this year, and hope to see everybody out and about and helping to showcase Beloit in, I think it's the 20th of March we start? Yes. To the end. That's all I have.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. I have two expressions of gratitude I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to thank all the residents who came to our listening sessions and provided input on our surveys to help us to determine what kind of qualities and characteristics we'd like to see in our next city manager. So I'm pleased that we were able to receive lots of resident input, and we will continue to look for resident involvement as we continue on in our search for our next city manager. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't be sure to thank our wonderful team of city employees who kept our streets safe for us over this weekend into today. The streets look beautiful. I don't know how they do it, but I'm so appreciative. I know they were up all night working to get our streets cleared, and also to our police and fire safety employees who never sleep, of course, and who are out there making sure everything's safe. So thank you to our wonderful city employees. Thank you.
Councilor Kincaid.
I too was at the BIF event at Merrill Houston, and that program each year gets bigger and bigger, and this is certainly going to be the best yet. So I urge you to look at the programs. There are a lot of great movies, and have a good time. I'll be out there myself, and I'm sure Dave will be too.
Councilor Hendricks.
Hi. I got a chance to participate in, well, my students got a chance to participate in Head Start's 50th anniversary last week, and that was a great event. So many families out in celebrating the alumni and anyone who's gone through the program. So it was good to see so many people out to that great event. And then I'd like to bring to your attention Black History Month. There's going to be a lot of events going on in our schools, particularly one through the Beloit Memorial High School. One event will be February 13th, is their second annual Soul Food Luncheon. So if you like to eat, it's a fundraiser for the Minority Excellence Organization. $8 will get you meat, sides, bread, dessert, and a drink, and proceeds go toward the Minority Excellence Organization and HBCU college tours, and that'll be Friday, February 13th from 11 to 2. I will have tickets this week, so if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, but it's through the Minority Excellence Organization at the high school.
Councilor Kelly.
Well, I sort of missed the BIF event. We were at the school board meeting, but the tickets are on sale online, and I don't, pretty much been working on BIF the last 2 weeks, so we haven't been out. So tickets are now on sale. Hurry.
Vice President Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to congratulate our city workers on how well they handled this snow emergency. It's been a while since we picked up this much snow. They did an excellent job. It's gratifying that we receive 10 or 15 compliments for every one person who thinks that we should have policed up the snow before it fell. But it was certainly great to watch them be their normal efficient self. That's all I have.
And I certainly echo the comments about the wonderful events coming up and the snow removal excellent job that was done, and have nothing to add to that. Item 10 is City Manager's presentation. We actually do have a presentation this evening. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have a presentation this evening. Police Chief Norm Jacobs is here, and he wanted a few minutes to give council and the community an update on some of the activities ongoing in the police department, reacting to the crime that has occurred in our beautiful city over the last several months, some of the things the police department's been doing to address that. So, Chief Jacobs, if you would, please.
Thank you for the time, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly the community needs a reassurance that the fight against violent crime in Beloit is being undertaken on a daily basis by the men and women of the Beloit Police Department, along with our partners in state and federal government. Let's review some of the problems that we've had. They certainly are serious. The first crime on April 25th, the Haley homicide, 2100 block of Newark. I'll give you some information on each one of these crimes that you may or may not know. You probably need to know some of these details so that you can make decisions in the future. And you can judge our police department on how we're doing. 2100 block in Newark, we believe that there were multiple suspects who knew the victim in this crime. It was an alleged drug-related crime. We have a crime gun that's being processed at a lab. There's 4 persons of interest in this case. 2 of them are in custody for other crimes. We're waiting for court action. It's pending, and the U.S. Marshal Service is trying to locate 1 other subject in that case. I hope you can appreciate that I can't give you any more details about that. These cases often take long times to solve. What we try to do is when we know subjects who are involved, we try to get them up on other charges, or usually they get arrested for something else, they get put in jail, and that's when we feel like they need to talk. That's one of the tricks. Second case is the Holloway homicide on 425 in the 500 block of Highland. We've had 1 conviction, 1 trial pending, the arrest of Angelo Young. There's still a Crime Stopper reward for the arrest of Angelo Young. The third was the Rosenbaum homicide on 511 and 900 block of 10th Street. That, of course, was a domestic violence incident. The trial is pending. Fourth was the Hardnett homicide on 522 in the 1400 block of Hull. That case has been referred to the district attorney for prosecution. There was some money involved with the crime. We're reconciling evidence and witness statements. The fifth was the Falcon homicide, July 20th at Woodward and White. The detectives developed a suspect in that case. There's 2 people in custody on other charges not related to the homicide, and that's how it works with our courts and putting pressure on people. The reason I tell you that is so that it's a bit of assurance to the community that the persons who have done these crimes oftentimes are in jail by the time we're able to get a case against them. They weren't random acts of violence that go from house to house. It's time you need to know that. The sixth was the Paramo homicide on August 2nd. Unfortunately, the victim of a murder committing an alleged robbery at a crowded basketball court. No one's talking in that case. 1 injured witness claimed no knowledge of the case. But we continue to get more information. The Hayes suicide certainly was considered a homicide at first. After further review, evidence, and information that came from the coroner's office, it was decided it was a suicide, a tragedy nonetheless. The weapon in the suicide was matched to a shooting on St. Lawrence that occurred a few months earlier. Seventh was the Hamley homicide, 2200 block of Sunshine. It was a domestic violence case, which are the ones that are truly tragic in our neighborhoods. There's some alleged mental health issues in that case. The eighth was the Royster homicide on November 23rd in the 1200 block of Copeland. It was some type of alleged robbery during the incident. There were 4 persons at the scene, and we're working on that case now. The first of 2015 was on the 19th. It's the Hurd homicide, Randall and Porter. Officer John Baumgartner was right around the corner, heard the shots, rolled up on the scene as people were pulling victims and persons about the car. People fled the scene. It's an alleged argument over a woman. Our witnesses fled. Others have not come forward. We have 2 persons of interest related to the homicide that have been arrested. 1 for felony bail jumping and disorderly conduct, 1 for harboring a fugitive. At the scene, we recovered 2 weapons and 1 facsimile weapon, so we have things to work on with that case. So we've been very active. The officers are under a lot of pressure to solve these crimes. A lot of things are going on. So what are we dealing with? I need to remind you that crime is mobile now, unlike in the past, where it occurred in one place, one household. It drives around in a car. Years ago, violent crime in Beloit involved gangs with territory, where we could anticipate one crime would turn into another crime on the other side of town. That's not so much now. Each one of these crimes are separate incidents, most undefinable, except for certain few things. The ages of the suspects and the victims are similar. Access to weapons and a dispute over money, drugs, or a woman. Also, in all but one of these cases, the victim knew the suspects. So what are we doing about these efforts? The first thing we did was start a project called Stop the Violence. It was a three-pronged effort to make immediate a difference in the community. It was an enforcement effort to put pressure on criminals related to some of the violence. It involved three efforts, some with federal assets. We did surveillance in the community. We made arrests over on the west side, and we targeted individuals in our community who we know are creating violence and disorder. The second part was the consent to search program. It came out when we talked to victims of the crime, and we noticed how frustrated they were about not seeing any results from our action. The consent to search was an effort to give certain members of the community the idea they have a part in the control over their own safety related to the violent use of weapons. You know, how many young men in our community can we save by parents and guardians taking control over the things that can kill them in their own homes? And I apologize wholeheartedly to the community whose daily jobs are upset by the onslaught of emails and telephone calls from activists. That's why the program was stopped so quickly. That wasn't the intent at all. Please consider that 63% of the persons killed by gun violence in the United States is suicide. Like the tragedy that occurred on Beloit's west side this summer, other accidental violent incidents are in last weekend's news from New Mexico and nearby Walworth County. The third prong is increasing our use of technology as the way we can work smarter as a police department. We use fixed and portable cameras. We don't tell you where they are, we don't tell you what we're doing with them, but we have them in the community. We're looking to get more. We use digital imaging devices, and we're using assets from the state and federal government, particularly the Milwaukee Crime Lab, where we process seized guns. 13 of them, in fact, were turned over in the last week to be analyzed. We also use the national database for identifying and correlating evidence recovered at any scene where a crime gun is used. Stop the Violence 2 began over on the east side with the last violence, and Captain Mallon is in charge with both of these programs for overseeing them. The first part of that is a new deployment strategy for our Area 305 car. We've researched incidents in the area. We're giving more time for that 305 car, which is the Merrill area, more time to deal with the issues that we need to deal with. Time is the biggest benefit that law enforcement has, unlike the technical tools and the gadgets that we have. Time gives the officers safety. Time gives the officers time to investigate these crimes and get to the bottom of the problem. Besides the 305 car, we've also deployed our number 302 car in the area so that it will relieve that car of the need to answer some of the minor calls for service that our police department still deals with. Almost 70,000 calls for service a year from our community is very demanding. We also have identified 4 particular houses in our community using our record management system and taking in community information from the people who live there. We've identified what I call as chronic consumers of police services in the 1600 block of Dewey, 1500 block of Porter, 1200 block of Copeland, and 1400 block of Hull, and they're being put on notice starting this week by our drug and gang unit that there'll be no exceptions to the rules that we set in the community, and there will be strict enforcement of all laws. And that's one of the community policing tactics that you have, is taking care of the small issues so that they don't get big. These houses, along with others, often attract trouble and residents who can't live in our community following the rules. If they can't follow them, they should leave. The 2 cars in the Merrill neighborhood will, of course, be more visible. I hear you loud and clear, you want more visibility, and we can provide that. We're also looking for a work site in the neighborhood that will support that visibility. I want to thank Mr. Langoni for offering a site, Mr. Barth for encouraging us to be more visible in the area. He gave us some suggestions. They're a little bit costly, but we're looking for a partnership with probation and parole to use a building that we already have keys for and use on occasion. That's in the Merrill neighborhood, right off Porter, where we can set up shop. That Area 305 car can have some hours. We can put our sergeants in there a couple hours a day so the community can feel safe. They know where we are. They can come and talk to us. and tell us the issues that we need to deal with, that they might feel uncomfortable calling our dispatch or stopping into the police department for. If that doesn't work, I'm prepared to drop a portable office wherever it's allowed. We have that ready. We continue to work with our community partners in the neighborhood. We go to regular POG meetings. I find them very informative. As a matter of fact, at the last POG meeting, Deputy Chief Duncan and I were there. We asked the members attending, we said, well, how much police presence do you want on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being you don't want the cops around, and there are people in our community who don't want the cops around because they think they cause the trouble, to 10, which would be a military force overtaking them. And most of them said, well, we'd like it 6 or 7 because they understand. And I think we're going to try to do 6 or 7. And that's what the community can take. We also work with community action to help support and stabilize neighborhoods. We encourage their continued activities. We also encourage neighborhood watch groups. There's 35 of them in the community now. Our next meeting is February 25th at the police department, where block captains attend. And anyone who's interested in being a block captain certainly is welcome to show up, and I'll give them some more information. Now, that's not the only thing we do. That's just us. Now, how about our federal partnerships that we have? Those partnerships began many years ago in the days of drug violence and gangs were out in the street. Gangs seem to have subsided a little bit. There are gang affiliations, but they aren't as territorial as they used to be. So these federal partnerships became embedded in Beloit for some time. We have an officer from our drug and gang unit that works with that task force. And they're able to change their tactics to deal with some of the issues that we've been seeing. Phase 1 of the effort was to identify and infiltrate the small urban terrorists that I call communities we have in Beloit. And federal resources have done so with the assistance of our officer embedded in the task force and other officers who work daily in their cars. I met just last week with these federal partners, mostly working out of Madison, and we will provide you information on their Phase 1 actions when appropriate for a multi-jurisdictional operation that this is, when it will not affect the needed outcomes of these investigations. And they promised me that shortly we'll be able to provide more information to the community. However, I don't know what shortly means in federal language. I want it quick. Phase 2 of the operation is underway, and I had a discussion with the agents that are involved with that operation, and I simply asked the community's faith and patience in this matter and other police investigations that should be on a need-to-know basis. That one is too new. Now, I don't know if you think that's enough what I told you. It's about what I can tell you. I have other recommendations. If they aren't enough, if you don't think we're doing a good job, then maybe we should work together and just consider getting a few more police officers. 3 additional police officers may or may not make a difference. I could put an officer in our drug and gang unit and put them in the Safe Streets Task Force, which would be a good use to upgrade the federal work that we do. I could put an officer on the east side and west side in our high crime neighborhoods to try and attend to some of the community issues, some of the concerns that the people in that neighborhood have. But that's up to you. You've been very generous in supplying the police department with resources over the years. We have some of the finest equipment in the state, some of the finest training, and no doubt we have some of the finest police officers in the Midwest working here. They're educated, they have a lot of reps, and they're very dedicated, that's for sure. Everything is a matter of perspective, and some see this crime as a terrible hindrance on our community. I don't quite see that. I see it as a tragedy in many places, many neighborhoods, many houses, but not as a whole community. I see a reduction in the overall 5-year crime rate of Beloit. People don't talk about that much. Our crime rate is actually reducing if you look at our UCR reports. This is a terrible spike in violent crime at this time. I see a current problem created over many years requiring public, private, and personal attention, not unlike any other urban community with a similar profile that Beloit has. I see a police department working hard and long, trying to make the difference where police work best, and that's what we need to do. Police need to do police stuff. I see increased community-based efforts by those among us trying to make a positive difference, one church, one neighborhood, and one home at a time, and that's where we make a difference. Sometimes we look at too big of a picture. Mother Teresa isn't the person that you normally think of when you talk about death and violence, but she gives us some insight when you consider, while we look for simple answers to a complex problem, each one of us dream to do one great thing, but isn't it more important that all of us each do many small things to be great? And that's what community policing is about. That's what I think you're asking the community to do, and that's what the community appears to be moving towards, at least when I'm reading in the newspaper and out. I'm very proud of the people in our community. So I ask your continued visible support for the police department's efforts. I ask you to provide reassurance to the community that you're comfortable that we're doing the job, everyone in the city is doing the job. And I promise the police department is conducting our business well with the resources you have provided. That is my report. Thank you very much for allowing me to update you, and I certainly will update you more as I get more information about these specific cases.
Thank you. It looks like we have at least one question if you're willing to take that, but I also see the city manager would like to
Yeah, if I could make a few concluding comments, I'd like to do that first, and certainly we'll open it up for everyone for questions. First of all, I want to thank the chief. That report was very thorough tonight, and I can tell you the chief and I have had a lot of conversations over the last several months about how to do this, how much to expose about investigations, how much to churn bad news by coming in to a public meeting on live TV and talking about crime, which obviously is the Achilles heel. It's the single negative aspect of what otherwise is a wonderful community. And so I think what the chief prepared tonight was a good overview of what's happening, how hard the department is working. We have a lot of good people. They've put a lot of hours into this, and we've got a lot of special activities that are going on. Some things you're going to see, like putting the extra squad car in the neighborhood. Other things you won't see, but officers are there. They're moving throughout the area. I also have got to comment, and I try not to do this, but our local newspaper editor last week took it upon himself to provide a fairly lengthy and detailed editorial outlining a number of tactics that he thinks we should be using in the fight against crime, excuse me. And many of them were quite good. They were commonsensical things, and they were very similar to a lot of the things that we've been doing, that the police department's been doing over these many months, trying to react to these crimes. A couple of them, however, were troubling. One was a suggestion that we go into a very, very aggressive patrol mode in the two impact neighborhoods, the near west side and the Merrill neighborhood, that we do a lot of stops, that we do a lot of interrogations, some friskings, being very, very aggressive at interacting with the public. That is kind of the antithesis of what community policing is all about. Not only is it going to alienate that population, but it might actually turn many of these people against the police department that have been working very, very hard through the faith-based community and through the local neighborhood associations, working with the chief and with the police department. So that particular strategy or tactic we were very troubled by. The other thing included in the editorial that was troubling was a suggestion that the city, the police department, specifically enact things we used to call roadblocks, where you would set up like a roadblock and you would pull over every car that came down the road. You would check them out, do their IDs, check the car, et cetera, et cetera. Those are specifically illegal in the state of Wisconsin. In some states in the union, they use those for like drunk driving enforcement and stuff, where you stop every car, check everyone out. That's illegal to do in this state. You have to have some probable cause to pull someone over to interfere with their free movement, their individual rights. So those two specific tactics, I think, were very, very troubling. The other comment I'd like to echo was one that the chief kind of finished with. These crimes are horrific. There was a cluster of them, unexplained. If you look at the city's history over the last 6-7 years, you'll see maybe 2, maybe 3 homicides a year, nothing like what happened in 2014. We're not quite sure why that happened. It involved a couple dozen people, at most, who were involved in these homicides. And most certainly, we as a community should not let that define Beloit. Beloit is a wonderful place. It has a very high quality of life. We've undergone this tremendous urban renaissance, and the whole community should take great pride in the accomplishments that have been made here over the last 25 years. And to take one black mark and elevate that above everything else as though it is the only thing representative of our community is wrong. And it's a mistake. The community needs to move on from that. We need to celebrate the wonderful and positive things that we have here, and we'll work very, very hard, and hopefully we can deal with these criminal situations. The chief mentioned many of these people are already in prison. Okay, they're not on our streets anymore. So I wanted to share those comments, Mr. President, and with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the councilors have that we can talk about.
I've got Councilor Lubke first.
Chief, thank you for informing the public of preventative, proactive steps you're taking, and I hope you come back often and inform the public like this. And I know you're limited to what you can say sometimes because of investigations, but I think it bears to be said too, to maybe counteract some of the negative media publicity. You can find in, I think, any profession, people that are bad or rotten or whatever, whether it be education or whatever. Let's take the police. 99 point whatever percent of our police, especially in Beloit, are dedicated, hardworking, well-educated, well-trained individuals who are working very hard to make Beloit a better community. And I think we don't say that enough because the media tends to focus on a few bad acts throughout the country, whereas the majority of our officers are doing a wonderful job, and we need to say that more often. I try to get out every Wednesday and walk with Rich and Katie Smallin and others in the Merrill neighborhood, and I see officers driving around, I see officers interacting with the public as they should be, and I think that has to be said too. Our officers are being seen, and as you mentioned, Officer Baumgardner was a block away from that last shooting, and he was right there on the scene offering support and help, and I think he got bit in the act. He got a pretty serious dog bite in the process doing his job. But you don't hear about these things a lot, that we're doing our job and doing it well in a quiet fashion. We tend to focus on the negative. So I just wanted to bring up some of the positives and thank you for the job you and your officers are doing.
I appreciate that. I spoke with an officer today who was retiring in this next week or so, and I do an exit interview, and he mentioned that, well, he was just a little bit tired of the national attention on police, and that actually was in his head. Now, we're very lucky in this area to have pretty reasonable media, and I'll admit that, and they're willing to listen to both sides. But once things get out of the area, out of the immediate area of any police incident, people put their own slant on it, and if they don't like the police, they will make it look that way.
Thank you.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. Chief Jacobs, I'd like to thank you for coming forward and speaking to us and to the public to let them know what we're doing to put in terms of preventative and proactive measures. I'm glad to hear that we will finally have an extra squad car in the areas that we're concerned about. And you had referenced that we could use additional officers. I've been asking every budget cycle, do we need more officers? Do we need more officers? And you've told us no. So can I assume that this budget cycle you will request that we consider more officers? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, I don't know. I disagree with you that I've said no, we don't need them. I have told you that I am told the city can't afford them, and I've always told you that I will use what resources you give me to the best of my ability. I have hundreds of ideas, and so do the officers, for extra resources. But I'm a realist, so that's the way I answer that question.
So the bottom line, do you believe that we could benefit from more officers in terms of our violence prevention efforts?
Well, I believe that there's people in the community that would feel extra officers showing them more attention would make them feel safer. I apologize. I cannot promise you that 6 or 10 officers will prevent a homicide. I can tell you they will make a difference in the neighborhood, one house at a time.
Okay, and then I am glad to hear you talk about a locale, a kind of permanent presence, a space in some of the neighborhoods that we're concerned about. You alluded to them. I mean, is that something that is going to transpire? We will have kind of substations possibly in the two neighborhoods we're most concerned about?
We will have a temporary closest, you could call it a substation in the Merrill neighborhood.
Okay.
I don't plan for one on the west side yet. Substations serve a purpose for a while. I don't know, I would have to look at it more to decide if we needed a permanent substation. We've had those in the city before.
Yes.
They become effective usually as calls for service draw the officers out of the substation. If you recall, when Walmart came in, they built a substation, an area where we could have an officer out there, and it would have been very good for that area of town. But the officer is generally so busy they can't spend a lot of time in there. So substations are okay if you can provide the resources for a certain amount of time to be there. I think realistically we can do it for a while to try and reduce the level of fear. To maintain it for a long time, I can't promise that we'll be able to maintain it unless we get more resources or we figure something else to do.
So by resources, do you mean more officers?
More officers,
Okay.
I could. If I assigned one officer to each side of town, I could tell people where that officer would be at a certain time.
Okay, I guess just speaking for myself, and all I can do is speak for myself, I'm committed to provide you with the resources, the people that you need, but it's hard to do when we're not asked to provide them, when we're not informed about what it is that would help make your community policing efforts stronger, what would help. So I guess I would just emphasize again, we can't give you something you don't ask for. So I'm hoping that you will ask for the resources for the people that you need. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Chief Jacobs at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your update.
Thank you.
Item 11 is reports from boards and city officers, 11A.
A resolution providing for the sale of $760,000 of general obligation promissory notes, Series 2015B.
Mr. Miller, and if you want to overview the package of what we're looking at, feel free to do that.
Sure, they all pretty much deal with the same event other than letter E. So 11A through D are all pretty much before you tonight are the resolutions, the initial resolutions to authorize us to issue general obligation notes and general obligation bonds. And these notes and bonds will be used to fund the projects that were listed in the capital improvements plan that were approved as part of the budget back in November. General obligation notes will be used to finance various equipment for public safety, public works, some other general type of equipment. And the general obligation bonds will be used to fund primarily infrastructure projects and some parks and rec enhancements. So with that, I would just like to introduce Dawn Gunderson from Ehlers and Associates. They are financial advisors, and she'd be happy to walk through the rest of the bond issue with you.
Thank you. You've been provided with two pre-sale reports this evening. One of them details the statutory reference and the authority for the issuance of general obligation promissory notes, $760,000, as your finance and administrative director has indicated. That's for capital equipment purchases within your 2015 capital plan. Notes are issued for a duration of 10 years. The material provided lays out the items identified in the notes, the issuance expenses to come up with the issue size, and provides some background and projections on tax rate impact for that issue, as well as the general obligation promissory corporate purpose bonds. There's a combining resolution for the total issue of $2,485,000, and there's two separate issues under state statute. Bonds are authorized by purpose, so you have two purposes: the street improvement purpose and the park enhancement and park facilities improvements. So those are the two individual resolutions that combine into the total resolution. Bonds are required by statute to be issued competitively. We will be holding a competitive sale for both of these issues on March 2nd. We will be back that evening with results of the competitive sale and a resolution for you to consider for the winning bid. The winning bid would be obviously the one that is the lowest cost of financing for you. The pre-sale report on both of those, as I mentioned, will spell out the projects being funded, the cost to issue and determine the sizing of those issues, and the tax rate impact of both of those. I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any details you'd like further explanation on, or general overall questions you might have.
Are there any questions at this time? It doesn't look like we have any questions. Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
On item 11A, is there a motion to approve? We'll do separate motions and roll call votes. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Lupke, second by Kincaid. Is there any further discussion on 11A? Seeing none, can we have a roll call?
DeForest. Aye. Hendricks. Aye. Haynes.
Aye.
Spreitzer.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Lupke.
Aye.
That's approved 7-0. Item 11B.
An initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,950,000 for street improvement projects.
Moved by Lupke, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Haynes. Is there further discussion on 11B? Seeing none, can we have a roll call?
DeForest. Aye. Hendricks. Aye. Haynes.
Aye.
Spreitzer.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Kincaid. Lupke.
Aye.
That's approved 7-0. Item 11C.
An initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $535,000 for parks and public grounds projects.
Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Haynes, second by Hendricks. Is there any further discussion? Can we have a roll call?
DeForest. Aye. Hendricks. Aye. Haynes.
Aye.
Spreitzer.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Kincaid.
Aye.
Lupke.
That's approved 7-0. 11D.
A resolution directing publication of notice to electors relating to bond issues and providing for the sale of not to exceed $2,485,000 of general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2015C.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Kincaid. Is there
Second.
second by Kelly? Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call?
DeForest. Aye. Hendricks. Aye. Haynes.
Aye.
Spreitzer.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Kincaid. Lupke.
That's approved 7-0. 11E.
A resolution supporting the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Partnership for Prosperity legislative agenda.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President, councilors, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to present this to you this evening. As you know, I've been very, very active in our state League of Municipalities, and one of the projects I worked on a great deal last year was this concept of a partnership for prosperity. As you know, municipalities have actually had their funding cut over the last 10 to 12 years. We are the only group of functioning government in the state of Wisconsin that's actually had funding reduced by the state. And so what we've been trying to reach out to the state is talk about resources, how important they are to maintaining quality urban places, and how important quality urban places are to economic development and job creation. There's a lot of research and a lot of very bright people I could quote that have documented that very linkage. This particular resolution was requested by the League, asking its member municipalities to endorse this program. As the resolution states, about 75% of the state of Wisconsin's gross domestic product comes from cities. 87% of all manufacturing properties and 89% of all commercial properties in the state of Wisconsin are located within incorporated municipalities. And that probably comes as a surprise to many of you here, many of you watching at home, to hear many people talk about cities in the state of Wisconsin. You'd think they would rather we all simply go away or fall into Lake Michigan, and yet we are not just the majority of the local economy, we are the overwhelming component of the local economy, and that includes creating jobs. The partnership refocuses a little bit the discussion on resources rather than simply asking for money, and it ties money to various economic development activities. It has several provisions that would improve TIF statutes and make TIF more attractive and more usable. There's some provisions in here that would loosen up the property tax levy limitation legislation to drive that a little bit closer to cost of living rather than zero where it is now. There's also a very interesting program in here that would tie an increase in funding for municipalities, which we desperately need. As you all know, we just talked about 3 new police officers. That's $300,000. Where is that going to come from if there's no new revenue? So this particular program, called the READY Program for Jobs Growth, would actually have the state provide some additional funding tied to cost of living. It would distribute that funding to local purpose units of government, 2/3 based on a per capita distribution, and the other third would be based on economic development in your particular area, the number of economic development projects and the amount of job growth that you've created in your community would drive a portion of the formula. So it's a very interesting way of actually tying resource allocation directly to economic development and job growth. So those are some of the ideas included in the partnership. Again, very, very exciting, comprehensive agenda. It came out of some strategic planning and other projects we did at the League this past year. We're really excited about presenting it to the legislature. In fact, that's already been done, and hope that at least some of this stuff is going to find its way into the budget bill, which the government will be talking about tomorrow night and be going to the legislature in a few weeks. So if there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If you like more information, I did attach a copy to the resolution. If you haven't already had a chance to read through that, you should do it and be familiar with it. Thank you.
Are there any questions, or is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Moved by Haynes, second by Lupke. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will just add one comment, which is that I'm going to abstain from this vote because I will be considering this agenda as a state representative for not only part of Beloit, but a number of other communities, and so I will let the other 6 of you have a vote on this particular resolution. Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to characterize my comments. While I am in support with almost all of the recommendations in this document, I disagree with one of the recommendations that are made in regard to levy limits and how those are determined. So I just wanted to clarify that I'm in support of all the other provisions and recommendations and suggestions that are made to state legislators, but that particular one is not something I agree with or concur with, so I will be, voting not in favor of supporting this resolution. So thank you.
Are there any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And I abstain. That was approved by a vote of 5-1. And item 12 is adjournment. Is there moved by Hendricks? Is there second by DeForest? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned at 7:45.